Let's talk about the best legendary cards to craft in the Rastakhan's Rumble era of Hearthstone. Starting off with this one, a Golden Millhouse Mana Storm. Oh, that's a lot of dust, but just to let you know it's real, there we go, confirmed.
Hey buddy, watch this.
Okay, so spoiler alert, Millhouse Mana Storm is not actually going to be on this list, but I am going to show you 10 other legendary cards that I think will help you build a great collection in Hearthstone, not just today, but for a long time to come. That said, this list is going to focus on cards that are not going to be rotating out of standard format soon, so staples like, the Lich King or Death Knight hero cards that are really prominent right now aren't going to be on this list because they're going to rotate out of standard format in 2 months. And because that's such a short lifespan, I really don't think they're the best pieces for your collection. But I've identified 10 others using some help from statistics on hsreplay.net based on their played rate, their win rates, their inclusion in popular decks. And based on all that, we're going to talk about the 10 best legendary cards to craft. Up first here is honestly a shocking inclusion. I cannot believe Mecca Thune made this list, but I was hard pressed to find a legendary that was better suited, that wasn't rotating out of standard format soon. As you look through a lot of the classic legendaries, as you look through some of the new Rastakhans and Boomsday Project legendaries, there just aren't that many neutral legendaries seeing play. But Mecca Thune is actually in a couple different competitive Hearthstone decks, namely Mecca Thune Warlock and Mecca Thune Druid have both found a lot of success on the ranked ladder. And I think they can both survive. I think there are going to be ways to play Mecca Thune as a combo card in the future. So despite my disbelief, Mecca Thune is actually a good card to craft right now. Up next, we have Harrison Jones here, a tech legendary card that's great at answering weapons. And although we've had things like Acidic Swamp Ooze and Gluttonous Ooze out there to answer weapons in a lot of decks, Gluttonous Ooze is going to be going away. And I think Harrison Jones is a suitable replacement for that option in a lot of things like odd control decks, for instance. But we've also just seen other decks that pop Harrison Jones in there when it makes sense, if it just seems to line up for the deck. Sometimes this guy makes the cut. And that's been the case for years and years in Hearthstone, and I think it will remain the case in the future because he's just a good mid to late game weapon removal option that can generate tons of resources, so the upside is there, and that's why Harrison Jones is a pretty good tech card to have in your collection. Moving on, let's take a look at Ysera, one of a few different dragons on this list. Ysera is really that original staple, just value bomb legendary. In many cases, the Lich King has served that role more recently. And although the Lich King's a great card to have, it's not a great one to invest in right now simply because it is rotating out so soon. But Ysera has been that for a long time and will still be that in the future as well. Not many decks right now are running Ysera, but there are always those that pop up from time to time. And if you run those late game priests or warrior decks, just control decks that need a threat, they need some dragon synergy, Ysera is there to serve that purpose and fit that role. Up next, we have another dragon aspect. This time around, it's Mallow Ghost. And unlike Ysera, which is sometimes a card you just kind of toss into decks, Mallow Ghost is really the centerpiece for certain decks, creating combo opportunities that otherwise wouldn't be possible. We see that most commonly right now in Zarek's Cloning Gallery Resurrect Priests, where all that spell damage in combination with Velen allows you to hit your opponent with giant Mind Blasts. But we've also seen Mallow Ghost very successfully in Druid and Rogue in recent months as well. Pre-nerf Druid in particular loved Mallow Ghost. So it's one of those cards that just creates those moments and opportunities. It's done it for a long time. It will continue to do it as a staple part of the classic set. So unless this thing gets Hall of Famed, it's going to be around for a long time. If it does get Hall of Famed, you get a full refund on your dust anyway. So a completely safe card and a good one to have access to a lot of different kinds of decks and new deck opportunities. After that, we have yet another dragon aspect. This time it's Alexstrasza. And although Alexstrasza is probably not as prominent today in Hearthstone as a card like Mallow Ghost, Alexstrasza has had a long and successful history in Hearthstone, being a tool for so many different decks, often being utilized in an aggressive fashion to reduce your opponent's health total so that you can find enough burst damage to kill them with, old things like Freeze Mage or even Mallow Ghost Druid fairly recently did that. And because of that opportunity to do such a big chunk of damage, in non-armor metas, Alexstrasza can be incredibly powerful, and lots of different decks find excuses to run this card for that very reason. And because of that long history, the classic nature of this card, and the future that I think it has as well, You just can't go wrong here. Alexstrasza is a fantastic card to have access to. And then after Alexstrasza, we have Zilly Axe from the Boomsday Project. And really one of the few cards on this list that's not a classic card, but because Zilly Axe is just so popular across a ton of different decks, this card's a good one to have. It's not like you need to build it in a mech style deck or a Divine Shield deck or a Lifesteal deck. It just does so much that it fits into so many different homes. Fits into odd decks like Odd Rogue and Odd Warrior sometimes. It just fits as a nice little control, heal, taunt option to remove something and gain a little bit of life for a ton of different decks. Things like Death Rattle Hunter have run Zilly Axe. So almost no matter what kind of deck you're looking at, whether it's fast or slow, no matter what class it's in, Zilly Axe is probably going to fit okay. It has that sort of Tar Creeper feel to it. It's just a legendary. And that means it's gonna see play. If you craft this card, you're gonna end up using it, and you're gonna use it a lot, and you're gonna feel pretty good when you use it too, because it often feels like a great play. So with Zilly Axe, you just have to give this card a chance. It is incredibly good. And with Zilly Axe behind us, now we're looking at Bloodmate Thune, another sort of jack of all trades card. Much like you toss Zilly Axe into a lot of different decks, Bloodmate Thune feels the exact same way. And although it's not as popular as Zilly Axe today, because this is a classic card and it will never rotate out of standard format, then that means you're going to be getting your return on this one forever. For the foreseeable future, as long as Hearthstone exists as we understand it today, Bloodmate Thune is the sort of card you're going to play. Now, I could rank this even higher on the list, arguably, just because it has such a strong precedent of being played in every Hearthstone meta. The only reason I didn't is because I don't think this is a kind of collection reshaping card. In other words, it's more of a complementary piece as opposed to a centerpiece. No deck is suddenly going to succeed only because of Thaunos. It's not the thing that wins you the game. It's not the big prize sort of legendary. It's a card you can often go without if you have to, but also just a really good fit in a ton of different decks. So you could make an argument for this guy being the number 1 or 2 card on this list. I'm not doing that quite yet because I think there are stronger things to help you build a better collection right now, but Thaunos sure is a good card to have because he's been good forever and will stay good forever. So as we move into the top 3 here with Greymane, these are some centerpiece cards. These are the cards that are going to help you change how you play Hearthstone, help you build new decks, going to open up lots of new lines of play for you. Greymane, of course, the even synergy card, very prominent today in things like even Paladin or even Shaman, some of the very best decks on the Hearthstone ladder that are just impossible to play without Greymane. I forgot to mention even Warlock, another very popular one throughout the history of Greymane. So this is a card that just creates the opportunity to play those decks. You can't play him without him, and because of that fundamental strength, because of his influence on the meta, despite the fact that he will eventually rotate out of standard format, there's so much influence to be had in the meantime over the next 14 months or so that you can't really play Hearthstone successfully at a competitive level without Greymane in your collection. You're just going to need it from time to time to play those successful even decks. So you got to have this guy in your collection. And then moving on to the number 2 spot, this is pretty much the exact same story as Greymane, just a little better, because odd decks right now I think are more common and more influential and often better than even decks. Things like Odd Paladin have been dominant since Baku arrived on the scene, but Odd Rogue has also been an incredibly successful deck, and Odd Warrior looks really good right now, but also I think Odd Warrior and Odd Rogue and Odd Paladin all stand to be incredibly successful after the standard format rotation, just because they have very reliable and powerful hero powers, so the cards around them almost don't matter as much as the hero powers themselves. So Baku can get you on a great track to some really good decks really quickly. And that's why I've not only put him above Gin, but put him very near the top of this list, because this is a fundamental legendary to have in your Hearthstone collection. You just have to have this guy to play all those good decks. So you got to craft it. And then finally at the number 1 spot here is a card that has taken the number 1 spot in various past iterations of this video. It's Leroy Jenkins, because he really is the go-to legendary finisher for so many different Hearthstone decks. Anything that's aggressively slanted, that's looking to kill their opponent quickly, is going to use Leroy Jenkins as that finisher, because he just packs a lot of punch in a single card, in a single draw. For 5 mana, that raw 6 damage push has won countless Hearthstone games. Undoubtedly, Leroy, in my mind, has won more Hearthstone games than any other card in history, finishing them off, dealing that final damage. This guy takes the cake there. No doubt about it. And because of that, because of the strength from day one for Leroy all the way up till today where the card is still played a ton, you just need this card. It's better than any other classic legendary when it comes to played rate, inclusion in the meta, and it is a classic legendary. So unlike Baku and Gin, which will eventually rotate out, despite their influence now, Leroy is going to have that same level of influence for a very, very, very long time, and that's why you need this card. And there you go. Those are the 10 best legendary cards to craft in Hearthstone. Just a reminder, again, I did focus in here on cards that will not be rotating out of standard format. There's a lot of good cards I left off this list that are going to be great for the next couple months. You know, Deathstalker Rexxar, Lich King, Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Those are all amazing cards. And there are other really strong class legendaries too. Things like Zul'jin that I almost put on the list. But some of those are, restricted to a single class. When you're trying to build a fundamentally sound collection, you need neutral legendaries. You need legendaries that are going to be around for a long time. And that's exactly what I focused on in this list. All that said, don't just craft a card because I told you to. Ask around, seek second opinions, read what other people have to say. I don't always get it exactly right. And beyond that, craft cards because they're fun. It's not all about competitiveness. I did focus on the cards here that'll lead towards the most success on the ranked ladder in Hearthstone, but sometimes it's okay to craft that golden Millhouse Mana Storm just because you want to. That's okay too. All that said, if you guys have thoughts, recommendations, advice that you'd like to leave people watching this video, of course, put that all in the comments below. But until then, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.